So thank you very much for joining us today for this webinar. We're going to be we're joined today by my very friend, a great friend and colleague, Francis Lougheed from Natural Resources Canada. And we're going to be talking about some work that we actually started supporting you on many years ago, Francis. I can't remember now. Can yourself?
Yeah, 4 years ago.
There we go.
Going on 5.
4 years ago, going on 5, absolutely. So looking at transforming data into impact, the organisational capacity approach. And actually, I've just heard from Francis just before we went live in this call that the work that Francis has been doing within Natural Resources Canada, he's actually been put forward for an award as an internal influencer within the company, a leading figure to drive the company forward in this area. So it's really actually such a appropriate day, I guess, to have this webinar to talk about the work that's now essentially been recognized, which I think is really significant. So well done to you, Francis. Before we get started then, so Francis Lougheed is the Senior Policy Advisor across performance measurements and data analytics within NRCan, or Natural Resources Canada. So he'll be doing the majority of the webinar today. Myself, I'm Dr. Dave Tarrant. I'm the Senior Technical Consultant and Learning Lead at the Open Data Institute, and it's my great privilege to have Francis along on with me today. For those of you who are new to us, I know that a lot of you are not and are very familiar with what we do and have joined recent events as well. But for those of you who aren't, at the Open Data Institute, our vision is really where we want a world where data works for everyone. And a big part of that is helping to build this open, trustworthy data ecosystem. And today's webinar is really within that, because in order to build those open and trustworthy data ecosystems, we need great data leaders. And that's what Francis is going to be focusing a lot on today within his talk, is on how do we build that capacity, how do we build those data leaders, and what does that look like. So with that, I'm actually going to hand over to you, Francis, if that's okay. I'll come back at the end and talk a little bit more about other ODI activities while we wait for questions. But do remember, you can put questions in the chat using the Q&A at the bottom as we go, and we'll come back at the end and address as many as we can. If there are any we don't get to address, we've already agreed that we will have a look at them after the session, and we will send out an email following the session, and we'll address any other questions that came up within that, so that we don't miss any if we don't have time. But anyway, with that, I'll hand over to you, Francis. I'll stop my share, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
I can indeed.
Excellent. So good day, everyone, and thank you for joining the session. Just a little bit of background on the Canadian Forestry Service. We are one of the core sectors of Natural Resources Canada, and we have roughly 650 employees, of which around 400 are scientists and researchers. We have 7 regional offices from Victoria, Edmonton, Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, Quebec City, Fredericton, New Brunswick, and Newfoundland and Labrador, with headquarters in Ottawa. I'm with the Planning and Resource Division. I'm part of Planning Operations and Information Bureau, which is branch, which is we look after all the overhead and support services for CFS and across Canada. I'm also the past co-chair of the People and Culture Working Group at the Government of Canada. This project started 4 years ago as we were looking to really leverage our data maturity, our data analytics, and how could we link what we were doing, our performance measurement, to the outcomes and impact that we were being measured on and that we were being funded on. And so this started with us looking at what we were doing and how we were doing it. We were given an innovation grant from NRCan, from the Reserve Fund, and we started to look worldwide at who were doing some of the best things in the areas that we were interested around data maturity, data analytics, etc., and discovered a number of really key items from Open Data Institute. We reached out to ODI, and Dave and his team came and helped us out on a number of really important pieces. So this workshop takes and will reflect some of the work we did with ODI, but also where we've come in the last 4 to 5 years. So I'm going to start with a couple of assumptions. And these assumptions are, number one, you understand data. You understand data is a core strategic asset to your organization. You understand the importance of using data to enhance value and inform decision making and contribute to impact. And you want a proven process that helps you transform data into insights and into impact. If those aren't your assumptions, then maybe you're in the wrong webinar. But I'm assuming that we're all on the same page on all of this. So let's move on. Let's talk about data and impact. There's a couple of slides in this presentation that are absolutely really, really critical. And this is the first one. If you don't get anything else out of this webinar, I would like you to understand the importance of the message in this slide. The foundational mission of everything we do, particularly in government and public sector, is to contribute to outcomes and impact. I'll be talking a lot more about that later. And here's the key message. The better we can gather and use relevant data and analytics to support our performance story, the more successful we will be to attract appropriate resources. That includes people, budget, data, and other kinds of inputs to our initiatives that gives us the ability to contribute to impact. This is about the money, folks. The better we can use data and analytics in terms of supporting our performance story, the better we are able to attract those resources that allows us to continue the great work that we're doing. This is one of my favorite quotes from W. Edwards Deming. He was the American statistician that basically transformed Japanese economy and production using statistics and data. And I love this quote: without data, you're just another person with an opinion. And I don't know about you on the call, but I've spent way too much time in a lot of meetings with people with opinions, and we could use a little bit more data. So let's talk about the data transformation challenges that we face. So government leaders and leaders across the world are challenged to deliver programs and policies effectively and efficiently, and to contribute to impact. In the Government of Canada, we're embracing digital transformation driven by data, and we have a number of core policies from Treasury Board, including the Digital Ambition, which came out in August 2022 and is being updated. We have the Data Strategy Refresh, which came from Treasury Board on a focus on data, data analytics, etc. That came out in March 2023 and will be is an evergreen document that is being refreshed for 25-26. And we need to understand the strategic role of data, that data transforms team culture. Let me rephrase that. Understanding the strategic role of data and how it transforms team culture. And of course, we need data leaders and champions to foster data-informed decisions. We started out with data-driven decisions and realized that that didn't play very well with senior executives. So we're really focused on data-informed processes that use data to support the knowledge and the wisdom that we already have in our organizations, and not just make people believe that we do everything just by the data. We do have a lot of wisdom in our organizations, and we need to leverage it. In the 2023 strategy refresh, this is the Government of Canada Data Strategy Framework. And this is for all of the Government of Canada. Guiding principles around client-centered, trusted, ethical, open, enabling, purposeful, with desired outcomes, trusted and accountable government, greater public value from data, enhanced evidence-informed decision-making, supporting for Indigenous data strategy, sovereignty, very big deal for us, particularly at Natural Resources Canada. Data as an asset with foundational themes around talent, governance, processes, and tools. I have seen a number of strategy frameworks from governments around the world, very similar, very parallel in terms of what some of the opportunities and objectives are. You'll notice in the lower left-hand corner, in the red box, there is a little box that says Culture, Communication, and Change Management. So the project that we have developed at the Canadian Forest Service totally covers that box. It is basically a comprehensive change management and communication approach to data culture. It's based at the organizational level, and it's around building organizational capacity. I'll talk a little bit more about that and define that a little bit more. Gartner issued a really interesting paper in 2018. And in it, they said people, process, and technology are the three common elements to all business change. But now, any organization undergoing a digital transformation must factor in a fourth element, data. So you'll see that data is at the heart of people, process, and technology. So data culture, so if data is at the heart of everything we do, then our data culture is the environment in which people, process, technology, and data are enabled and enhanced. So culture is that environment. And we as data leaders have to begin thinking about how we manage that culture in terms of being successful, understanding that we are now all data workers. So digital and data transformation is not about technology at all. It's about people. And this is really the key success factor. Technology is the enabler. It's the what we use. It's not the solution as much as tech vendors would like us to think that it is. Process is the how we do things. It's described in logic models and key performance indicators. That's what KPI stands for. People is where we find the solution to the data challenge. We need to build organizational capacity around data and our people, and that's culture. So here's a definition of data culture. I have scoffed this from Tableau. It's one of the best definitions I've ever seen on data culture. So they basically came out and said data culture comprised the collective behaviors and beliefs of people who value, practice, and encourage the use of data to improve decision making. As a result, data is woven into the operations, mindset, and identity of an organization. A data culture equips everyone in your organization with the insights they need to be truly data-driven. We have substituted the word informed, tackling your most complex business challenges. I think this is a really good definition. I can't find one that's more comprehensive or that is better. Another little quote from Deming: "In God we trust, all others must bring data." Now, there are two ways that we can build a data culture. And in the Government of Canada, both of these are being worked on in different departments and agencies. One is the individual capability approach versus the organizational capacity approach. The capability model focuses on individuals and links data skills to the job descriptions and the outputs and deliverables of an individual's jobs. In fact, there is a working group at Treasury Board Secretariat. That's our core group. Our core, they provide all the money in government here in Canada. And they are actually trying to identify core data skills based on your employment classification code. So if you're a techie, an IT person, you have this, and an IT4 or an IT7 has this, etc. This is a black hole from which no one will recover and is the work of the devil. The problem with one of the challenges with this capability model is that it focuses and identifies that there are data people and there are I don't do data people, and there are never enough data people, and you burn out the ones that you do have. When we looked at that approach, we rejected it because we believe that everyone is now a data worker. As I said earlier, data is at the heart of everything we do, and we actively promote a corporate culture where data is managed as a core strategic asset, and using data effectively is how we roll. So what we have designed is an organizational capacity approach to building data culture and recognizing that we need to work with everyone. And this is part of just what we do and how we operate. So let's link data culture and the link to transformation. So data culture contributes to the data governance and the transformation strategy. Data acumen leads to data skills and literacy, which together enable data and digital transformation. One of the key things we discovered is when we went to senior leaders and executives and started talking about data literacy, and that we needed to foster data literacy and that they needed to look at their data literacy journey, they basically said to us, we're already data literate. We use Excel, we use Word, we do word processing, we do all of our emails. We are data literate. And as we started, and so there was this kind of notion that if you say to somebody that they need data literacy, you're really telling them that they are illiterate. And that message kind of creates some barriers and challenges in terms of the change management agenda. Working with a colleague at another department, we started really focusing in on this, and we came up with the concept of data acumen versus data literacy. And again, the slide earlier that I told you is really important. I think this one is the second slide that's a really key differentiator and has changed the entire conversation that we're having in the government of Canada around data acumen versus data literacy. There are two core agendas that we have in government. One is the change agenda. Where are we going in the future and what do we need to do to get there? Versus the sustaining agenda, which is the meat and potatoes of what we do every single day. Data acumen relates to the change agenda. It's strategic. It focuses on how an organization uses data strategically. It involves understanding of how data can be leveraged to achieve business and mandate objectives. It's at the executive level. It's about high-level decisions based on insights using data to drive the organization's corporate strategy. It's around core skills around leadership, which includes elements of data literacy, but relies on a broad understanding of how data fits into the organization's vision and mission. In brief, these are the strategic leadership and decision-making aspects of data found at the executive level. Data literacy is more operational. It's about, again, what are we doing every single day, and focuses on individuals' abilities to understand data, interpret it, and use it effectively. And it's targeted at the needs of different levels and types of work. It's relevant to individuals and teams and employees across the organization at all levels, and helps team members to use data to fulfill their specific responsibilities. Those roles and responsibilities are variable because different jobs include different mixes of foundational skills like data collection, analysis, visualization, and management. And what we're trying to do with data literacy is ensuring that employees are proficient with data in their day-to-day work. And these, of course, are the practical knowledge and skills to work effectively with data at all levels to implement the strategy. We've actually taken this to Treasury Board and to our CDO and CIO, and they are actually incorporating this kind of language now in the requirements and the job descriptions for the chief data officers and chief digital officers in the government of Canada. When we started talking about data acumen, we realized we needed to create an opportunity for senior leadership to be able to understand this and really begin to understand the value of their data. The biggest challenge we've had in leadership is really focusing on that data value and the strategic aspect of data. And what we've done is created a 6-step process, which we call Your Data Journey. And we are delivering this in a number of our regional offices and at headquarters within the CFS. We are completely in the Forestry Service. This is being rolled out across the Forestry Service. And it's being adapted for use in other departments. I'm working with Agriculture Canada. Environment Canada has been looking at it. Public Health Agency of Canada is looking at this. And we're getting a lot of interest in this. One of the reasons we're talking with you today is in talking with Dave and the ODI team is, are there opportunities to leverage this and take this farther afield in conjunction, in partnership with ODI. So the 6 steps of your data journey: step 1, identify where you are and your team are on the data journey. Step 2 is learn about the value and impact of data, build your data community, create and launch a data value statement. I'll come back to that later. Begin your own personal data literacy journey using free training that we've identified, and become an active data leader, promote, and support. So defining data practices that'll help business decisions, building dashboards, and engaging in the data culture enablement process, which I'll come to in a minute. One of the key tools that we are using in your data journey with tremendous success is we play Dataopolis. Now, this is an ODI developed game. We actually do this with our executives as part of our Your Data Journey. I have done data acumen workshops in a number of different departments, and we bring Dataopolis and we play Dataopolis. And it's really interesting to see the lessons learned, even playing it for an hour and a half. It really begins to set the tone for understanding the value of data, leveraging open data, and it brings up a whole bunch of issues. for executives. So moving on. When we engage with ODI, we were working on developing this data culture enablement process. So I'd like to share with you some of the foundational tools, how we worked with ODI on that, and how we moved from theory into reality. So let's start with the data value proposition. I talked earlier about logic models. When we describe processes in results-based management, which we use in the Government of Canada, we use logic models. And the generic logic model is we take inputs, we transform those inputs through activities into outputs. We have a technical term for those outputs. We call it stuff. And so we generate that stuff, and that stuff contributes to outcomes, which also contributes to high order impact, i.e. changes in Canadian society and the mandates that we have at the government department level that we are being looked to work with. So for instance, in the Canadian Forest Service, we're doing a lot of work on climate change, wildland fire mitigation and management and information. We are also contributing to the economic impact of forestry in Canada, which you can imagine is a pretty big deal. The Canadian Forest Service is 125 years old. We were actually founded in 1899 and have been both a department and also part of other departments. If you then look at the data value model, this comes from information management. Those of you who have done any work in information and knowledge management will recognize this value model. Data it needs to be transformed into information. Information becomes knowledge, knowledge becomes insights, and insights contribute to impact. We kind of munch those two together to create a data value proposition. So data in and of itself isn't worth very much. It's just a lot of tables and a lot of things that need to be analyzed. So we transform data through analytics into insights. Insights are the key output that contributes to data-informed decisions and contributes to impact. We have been able to demonstrate this in a variety of different case studies, and we are doing some tremendous work in looking at our data, transforming it through analytics into insights and contributing to mandates and data-informed decisions. We also then looked at an organizational data maturity model. We adapted this from OECD and some other kinds of data maturity model, including work with Dave and his team in terms of guiding us on this. And so our data maturity model is data reluctant, data aware, data guided, data oriented, and data informed. What we learned in working with this is that it's more of a lens to help us understand relative maturity of data culture in an organization. It's more of a spectrum than a definitive place in time. In other words, you might want to be data reluctant in measuring the impact of paperclips on productivity, whereas you may want to be completely data driven or data informed in looking at data on climate change impacts. And I can share with you in question period how we've kind of used that and the assessment tool we use. This is the reason we came to ODI in the first place. This is the ODI data skills framework. It is the most mature data skills framework I could find in the world. And what this framework does is it helps you understand what skills you need in an organization. You don't necessarily want everyone to have all of these skills, but you have to have all of these skills within your organization. What I really have appreciated about this is the difference between business management and leadership, foundation engineering and analysis. And we basically created a data culture assessment tool, which measures these skills against the data maturity model that you saw in the previous slide and identifies gaps between current status and future goals. So we found, for instance, if I go back, we found that our scientists are data oriented. We are data guided in a lot of the things we do. We are data aware in operations, and we are data reluctant in management. So it was an interesting process to go through. The key tool that we developed in conjunction with ODI was our data personas. This data persona model is built around roles and how people interact with data. There are other data persona models, particularly in Government of Canada, that have been developed by StatsCan and a number of other departments that are related to occupational skills. And this one is not designed this way. This is The data personas describe the level of data skill needed to meet individual occupational and organizational data needs. There are 4 personas: data consumer, data communicator, data analyst, and data scientist. And you can see on the screen, we are all data consumers. We all use data for informed decision making as an impact at some point in the work that we do. The data communicator are those unique individuals and unicorns that translate the data story for the data consumer. I am typically a data communicator. The data analysts are the individuals that do the analytics, that find the insights in the data, but they're not always great communicators. And the data scientist mines and processes data into an asset, and you'll see that data is at the heart of all of that. And we have developed and curated training for each of these personas based on training that we can get internally to the Government of Canada, but we've also linked to external free training that we can access through a number of other providers. I had a previous CDO, when we presented this data persona model, said that this was the first data persona model that he had ever seen that he thought could actually work. This is infinitely flexible, and it provides you with an opportunity to flexibly put people in different places. We have an associate deputy minister who basically is our VP for the Canada Forest Service. He definitely needs to be a data consumer. I would like him to be a data communicator. He doesn't need to be a data analyst. And in fact, it would be a waste of his time to be a data analyst. That's what you have data analytics teams, et cetera, for. But we have used this as basically, these models that you've seen are at the heart of what we are doing in the data culture enablement process. So this is our change management model. It's a 7-step model. It's based on ADKAR ProSki change approach. We used a ProSki ADKAR specialist to help us develop all this. This was in conjunction with the work we did with ODI. For each of the steps, we have both the activity, we have core models, and we have developed comprehensive tools, both in English and French, to deliver this. This is a literally shovel ready in the ground. You can basically take this and work with it. Because all of our materials have been developed in the Government of Canada with taxpayer money, we are able to share it within the Government of Canada, and under an open government license that the Government of Canada uses, we can license this to other organizations around the world. And Dave and I can come back and talk to you about that a little bit later in question and answer. But the 7 steps: leadership commitment. You've seen the data culture model. You've seen the Your Data Journey. We have the data value statement, frequently asked questions, and we have a white paper called the Executive Roadmap. We also have a product that we will be sharing with you, which is a data culture scorecard. This is a key success factor to get senior management buy-in. 80% of culture change initiatives fail, and it's mainly the biggest failure point is lack of senior management buy-in. You spend 80% of your first 20% of your time on leadership commitment. Then there's communication strategies. We have the change model you've seen. We've developed generic communications plans with intranets, webinars, podcasts, and data summits. Assessment and readiness. We have a data maturity and data skills model and the data culture assessment survey. We then promote data skills and literacy. We have the data personas model and curated data literacy training. We then look at sharing lessons learned through informal learning processes and communities of practice. We have adapted a StatsCan data valuation model so we can actually tell you what the value of your data is in your organization. In the CFS, it's roughly $183 million is the value of our data on an annual basis, with an economic impact value of roughly $360 million. And then, of course, step 7 is connecting to corporate data strategy and digital transformation. That's at the Government of Canada level and at the departmental level. When you start a change management process, you're going to get resistance to change. So it's challenging. How come? Often it's because there are simple answers, but complex solutions. We work in multidisciplinary stakeholder environments. There are ethical implications. We are managing in a rapidly changing environment. Just look at the addition of AI in the last 2 years. And there's so much training and so little time. And so there are barriers to this. So how do we deal with that resistance challenge? First thing to do is identify your burning issues and key mandates, and link data and culture to those burning issues and key mandates. Link your data and culture to your core competencies and your performance reviews being done at the EX level and individual levels. Most importantly, you need to find your executive data champion. Now, I'm very lucky. I have a DG, I have a director and DGs that are very much behind this and supporting it incredibly. And I have a chief digital officer who is promoting this across government and taking it not just across NRCan, but across the government of Canada. And lastly, you need to embrace your own personal data journey. Data leadership can come from anywhere in the organization. You can be a data leader. And that's the challenge that I'm issuing to you today. So here are the key lessons learned. I'm starting to summarize now. Number one, data is foundational, people, process, and technology. Data is about impact. We can transform data through analytics into insights that contributes to impact. Data is people. It's about our organizational capacity, and we need a change management approach to leverage that culture. We have that in DSEP. Data is a strategic asset. We have the data value model that can actually give you a dollar value. Data is enterprise. Every organization is now a data department. And lastly, it's a journey, not a destination. And DSEP is a comprehensive approach to building a powerful data culture. So what's your role as a data leader? As a data leader, we need to manage organizational culture to ensure their teams, programs, and processes are meeting goals and contributing to impact. We are in a new data world, and we need to ensure that we have the skills and abilities necessary to be successful in this new world of data, particularly with AI coming in. So how can we leverage our data? Start with looking at dashboards. Dashboards are designed to share, communicate, and collaborate. Identify and prioritize. What's your mission? What are your urgent priorities and mandates? What are your top 3 issues for 24-25? What are your data needs for those mandates? Does the data exist? Will it support improved decisions and results? And lastly, your data culture, your data acumen, your skills, and your literacies. You need to identify and prioritize what you are going to do in your data journey and leading your teams through that. As I said earlier, we've developed a little kind of freebie. We call it the Data Culture Scorecard, and it's designed to basically start you on talking about data culture. You can share it with colleagues, get them to fill it out. You will be getting a copy of this Data Culture Scorecard after the webinar. There are also links to other materials in there, the executive roadmap. There are links to, if you want to reach out to myself or follow me on LinkedIn, there's also links there, but it's designed to get you started and having that conversation. I'm going to share with you some of the tools that we've done. In the PRD group that I'm with, we developed a data culture charter. This is for 24 through 26. It focuses on the why, the people, the process, technology, and data. And this is a stake in the sand that says we believe that data is important, and here's how we're going to support all of our people in managing their data and their data journey. We looked at our organization chart and we matched it up to the data personas. And what was really interesting is we discovered that there are a number of people that have different kind of personas and they need different personas. They may not be there, but it's included in their performance strategy and performance management agreement. And we are doing the training and the data literacy on that. Lastly, we collected and put everything together, and we have a director's data dashboard. One of my directors actually bought a 3rd monitor. This data dashboard sits on his monitor, and he tells me he's using it at least 3 times a week. And this is his links to all of his data for all the things that are important for this individual. Just to show you, this isn't necessarily complicated. This is just a link library that we did actually in PowerPoint. But it links into our document information and management system, and it brings everything together in one place for this individual. So next steps. You can do this with the link that you'll get in the Data Culture Scorecard. Please feel free to download the Executive Roadmap to Data Leadership. I invite you to join or become a part of Your Data Journey Challenge. We are implementing, the Your Data Journey challenge is that roadmap that I showed you around data acumen. It's basically 4 2-hour sessions. We have been chatting with ODI about sponsoring a Your Data Journey Challenge. And if you're interested, please feel free to reach out to ODI and we'll see what we can do to organize something like that. Launch your own data culture enablement strategy within your own organization. Start small and leverage up and connect with other data champions. One of the benefits that we have found being an ODI member is that we get to connect with other data champions, and ODI is brilliant at bringing us all together. There was a final quote and it's gone. I unfortunately must have eliminated that slide, but it was a quote from Tim Berners-Lee, basically saying, imagine all the things you can do when you get access to all the data and when you can leverage the data that you have. And that's it for me. I will turn it back to Dave and the ODI team. And thank you very much for the privilege of sharing this with you.
Oh, thank you very, very much, Francis, for that excellent presentation into the incredible work that you've been doing over in Canada to really bring this together and push it forward in terms of its maturity and in impact. So please, if you've got any questions, then they can go in the chat. I'm going to start us off with one actually that relates to that very last quote from Tim Berners-Lee. I've got it actually here in my copy if you want me to just quickly share that.
Yeah, if you could just get that up.
Yeah, let's hit that up because it does relate to it. So there we go. Hopefully it's that one that you were mentioning. You can see that one okay?
Yeah, that's perfect. That's great.
Great. It's difficult to imagine the power that you're going to have when so many different sorts of data are available. And actually the question that I wanted to ask that's related to this was very much about the change that's happened in the last few years. Has the emergence of AI, which is now that kind of difficult to imagine the power, but maybe we can start to see it emerge. You know, I'm not sure even Tim anticipated in this way, right? But, you know, how has that changed the conversation here? And are you better prepared as a result?
So, I mean, I think that's a whole other webinar, but briefly, one of the things that we're now doing is we're now adapting AI literacy into this entire process. And here's the really interesting thing. DSEP is flexible enough because it's focused on people and not technology. As the technology changes and the processes changes, it still becomes a people issue. And the personas now become even more important, whether you're a data consumer, a data communicator, or a data analyst. All we're doing is we're just changing the technology. The issue around digital and data transformation and how we leverage that, it's still a people issue. So the change management process doesn't change. Just the content within DSEP starts to change. And so that's one of the things that we're really working on. And you know, Dave, you and I have chatted about this. We're looking to ODI on leadership in this area and bringing some of these things to bear. And I think ODI has a lot to contribute in that area. But so the process, your data journey doesn't change. Just where you focus your data and AI literacy becomes more changes.
And I guess, will we see such a thing as AI acumen then, if we've got AI literacy?
Absolutely. Well, okay, so going to senior leadership. I don't know about other governments in the UK and elsewhere, but I know in the government of Canada, there is a whole push on AI, and all of our executives are saying, we need to be doing AI. But I don't think that they really understand what AI is. So definitely AI acumen, as we have data acumen and AI acumen, I think there's a link there. And I think there's a lot of work we can do to help people understand what the pluses and the minuses are.
Right, lovely. Thank you very much, Francis. Actually, one's come in from an attendee. So was the output from the assessments gathered and presented as an assessment of where the organisation is based upon on the individual scores? Also, did the assessment output suggest the next steps for the individual? Because you mentioned, absolutely. I think the assessment in there, you mentioned it was on a spectrum. So I guess that's where that question's coming from.
For sure. So when we did the assessment study, we sent it out to about 100. Well, we sent it out across all of Canadian Forest Service. So there are 650 odd people. Some are odder than others, but that's okay. But we had about 150 respondents, and we were able. It was done anonymously, but we use their what we call the classification codes to be able to determine where they are, and compare different areas. And from that, we then went into workshops in the individual divisions and in the individual branches to allow branch management to basically say, okay, we're embracing our data culture. Where do we go with it? We have presented this presentation in various forms to a number of our regional offices. I've been to Edmonton, Quebec, and Atlantic, and we are now doing your data journey challenges. We'll be starting one in Atlantic in January. We've done one internally last year, and we are rolling it out. Sault Ste. Marie wants one, and we want to go from there. So we see this as an opportunity to build data acumen, AI acumen, and then leverage that into data literacy.
Beautiful. Thank you very much for that. Another one's just come in, actually. And it's related to another point that I had. You said that the data communicators are the unicorns.
Yes.
Right. So, in that sense, the question that's come in, and I will expand a little bit on it. How do we involve the data analyst to ensure that, as data communicators, I guess we've got one on the call, which is brilliant. The analysis is assessed accurately and with accountability. So I guess that's the part of this. The problem with it, where the data communicator really comes in, is really to both be able to critique what the data analyst has done within the context of the domain, within the context of the application.
Absolutely.
And then communicate that effectively to essentially the decision maker who's going to be accountable for it.
And so there's kind of an interesting dynamic there, and I think that's why the personas, I think, are a way to have this kind of discussion. So if all of us are data communicators, data consumers, your executives are going to be data consumers. They may not be analysts. We need to help our leaders become data communicators, and that means understanding the role and value of data, how we use data appropriately and responsibly, how we do it with accountability and transparency, how do we leverage ethics and data governance. I mean, all those things that you have, that ODI has described in the skills matrix, all of those things come to bear, right? Sorry, you've gone silent on me.
Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you very much for that. Yes, do keep the questions coming if there are any more, and thank you for that. For that prompt, because that's absolutely where we have been focusing over the years, and we've been expanding this offer. So I thought I might just share a few things before we wrap up on what we've been doing at the ODI. Again, feel free to have some more questions come in. But so a few of the things that we've been focusing at the ODI, and I noticed that it's download, PowerPoint into Google Slides into PowerPoint. It's going to mess up a list of numbers, so please ignore the numbers on the left of this slide. So one of the few things that we've been doing at the ODI, we've got more of our courses are now available for free to members, and these courses really, from the people who've been taking them, the reviews have been great because they really are hitting that point of. They're really for data communicators. Another way of putting them is that we found that talking about people is trying to encourage people to become intelligent data customers, which is another way of thinking about those communicators, right? And also the leaders, is how do they become intelligent customers so that they know that they can rely upon the analysis that's being done, or being able to question it effectively. So there's lots more available now through our membership focus. We also have, just to update people on the kind of areas that we're focusing on, Francis has mentioned many of these, data ethics being one key one. We've still been doing a lot on data strategy more recently, very much around how do we encourage these journeys, how do you encourage more organizations to become more, I'm going to use your phrase, encourage the data acumen to grow within organization. And we've also been doing a lot more on assuring data practices. So we've got a new maturity model now available, which is the data practices maturity model. Very much broader as a model, and something that might be applicable for people to look at as an evolution of previous maturity models. And within that, we actually have some tools that you can use that I'll come on to. Francis mentioned about Datapolis. We still run that very much with teams. It's a really good away day thing, by the way, if people are looking for a good thing to do for a couple of hours on an away day. This is a really good thing to get organizations thinking differently about strategy, which is, I guess, how you use it, Francis, as well.
Oh, absolutely.
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 And we also have our Data as Culture program. You talked about data culture. Our Data as Culture program is actually an art program, contemporary art program, which we think is really great for actually talking about the impact of data on people through the medium of contemporary art, essentially. They're very much questioned by the original funders of the program, but very much now supported because it reaches new audiences and really reaches new people. I mentioned about the tools. One of the tools that would be worth checking out, especially as you mentioned about maturity, is our new maturity assessment tool, which is now available to members as well. It actually has several maturity models within it that you can load. And I'd be really interested, Francis, talking to you about your own maturity assessment and whether this would help or whether we should roll it out within it. And there are several other tools on there as well that also leverage AI to generate human readable actions and summaries to help really do things efficiently. And then what else was I going to say? We have our research, obviously, around data-centric AI. We've got a really big program in there a moment about what are the changes that AI is really impacting on data and how are we handling those. And I'm just going to pause there for a second with another question that's come in. Which is the difference actually between data translator. This is actually something that's come out. I believe Forbes put out an article on this that said, forget data scientists, hire a data translator instead. So that and that really actually plays into your personas in that there's one that you're missing a key one because you've gone the other way. Data scientists existing more towards and beyond data analysts. So actually we need to come the other way into data communicators. So the data translator role between the analyst and the business, I guess that's similar to data communicator. Or are there any differences?
That's the communicator. Can you pull up the data skills, the ODI data skills matrix?
Of course I can. Let me just grab that presentation for a second while you chat.
So if you go to the ODI data skills matrix, in the very center column, those are the skills that a data communicator requires. Working with ODI, working with Dave and his consulting team, we recognized that that was a unique role and that we needed to develop a lot of training and materials around that. And that's one of the key areas. So if you see that introducing data, creating value, finding insights, developing strategy, and leading change, that's the data communicator. Those are the core key roles that a data communicator needs to have. And there are individuals who can embrace that. Interestingly enough, I come from a classical music background, and I would suggest to you that that is an interesting background to look at. You need people who can think left brain, right brain. You need people who are nerdy in a curiosity kind of sense. And you may not find them in executive leadership. You may find them deeper in the organization, in kind of the quirkiness of deeper in the organization. I'm definitely quirky, and enjoy kind of taking that role on between the data communicator, between the data consumers and the data analysts. I know enough about data analytics to be dangerous. And I know enough about business strategy and etc. that I can bring those two things together, which is kind of an interesting position to be in. And definitely it's a translation role, Dave. Absolutely a translator role. Thanks for that.
I mean, thank you very much, Francis. And it was, in fact, the way that we decided to design the framework is what are the key set of skills, as we call them, that bring the two sides together. And it was, it's not an easy thing to do, which is why we're so proud of how the framework works, is that set in the middle do really play that translator role. It's quite fortunate, actually. We built the skills framework before that article came out. We didn't know what it was called at the time, but we've now got data communicator and data translator. I think those two are reasonably interchangeable in how we use them. But certainly looking at the center of the framework is really key. And what's really interesting as well is when that we provide our data literacy training, as we call it. We very much focus on a balance of skills across the framework. Right, so we will never do a course that is purely on one side of the framework. So we will always talk about things like, well, maybe we'll do applying statistics and visualizing data, but then we'll come across to working ethically and building communities to talk about the impact of that. And that really helps people bridge through finding insights, and that's what grounds the courses that we do. So things like using case studies are a really good example of this, because then you go, well, what does it mean for a population, a society, a part of, what does it mean when you apply it? And how does that help you to develop a strategy? So as one of the key things always with thinking about gaining data literacy and skills is, how do you cut through the middle of this framework and not just exist on one side? Because if you just exist on one side, you're not really looking at that key balance of skills that you need.
If I can add just another comment, we've presented our data personas to a number of different groups across Government of Canada. And one of the roles that we get questioned on is, how come you didn't put in data stewardship? And our response to that is, data stewardship is actually something that everybody needs to do. And I know that a number of departments in the Government of Canada are actually trying to specify the data stewardship role. And again, I think it's putting in a complexity that isn't necessary. If we include data stewardship and data governance and ethics and all of that kind of stuff in our data literacy at all the different levels, then I think data stewardship just happens.
Beautiful. Thank you, Francis. Yeah, we have some work on data stewardship at the ODI, but we actually tend to talk about it as a yes, it is something that kind of everyone is doing, but very much about, when you're talking about data stewardship, we're talking about the kind of stewarding data for a purpose. So what are we trying to achieve? So there's very much a process to it as well. So you're bringing in a lot of the process to make sure that we're stewarding data carefully for whoever needs access to it. So whether that be future generations or whether that be people across your ecosystem. Well, thank you very much. I think we should be able to bring it to a close there. I've just got a couple of things to mention just to wrap it up. So, yeah, please do reach out. Francis mentioned on that webinar about bringing the Your Data journey wider than Canada, and that's certainly something that we're going to be working on together. We'll send out the scorecard following this webinar, and if you need to get in touch, contact details are on the slide. I'll just put a plug in for the next couple of events that we've got coming up at the ODI. We've got a really exciting one on the 6th of December. We've got our first Data Ethics Professionals webinar, which is being presented by a lady from PwC who's recently won a Women in Data Prize for the work that she's been doing in operationalizing data ethics within PwC. So that one's on the 6th of December in a similar time slot, if you can join us. And then on the 10th of December, it's data-centric AI, and where we're going to be joined by Chris Johnson, Chief Scientific Advisor at DCIT, to talk to us about some of the activities they've been doing. So that's the two that are coming up. I wish I could remember their titles, but they've gone completely blank. Please do excuse me. But you can look them up on our events page and register just like you did for this one here, and we hope to see you along at those. So thank you everyone for coming along, and enjoy the rest of your day.